Melissa came out in 1983, and the artwork is fucking amazing. The weird thing is, though, I used to look at like unrendered pictures of it, and I was just like, what the hell is that? It just looks like splotched colors or whatever. But if you look really closely at it, it's like some sort of skeleton demon. There's like flames coming out of the side of his face. It looks badass, and I love the weird lettering that they used for the title of the album, Melissa. It kind of looks like it's painted or wrote in blood. And just like how the EP was some songs they had perfected, a lot of the songs in here are kind of older songs they had back in their Brates or whatever, or Brats or whatever the fuck it's called. Now there is some sort of weird dated sounds to some of the songs, some specific riffs probably earlier on in the album, but they really polished it up to where it sounds more like speed metal and just evil shit. And the song off this album, which I named this whole series after, Into the Coven, or however the hell it's pronounced, was their very first song, and I think it was originally called Love Criminals or something like that, which is just stupid. And what else is kind of funny about that song is that Into the Coven or whatever was actually on the PMRC's Filthy 15 for being occultic. Another interesting thing is that the record company wanted them to do a cover of Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song, which they recorded, but they didn't release it on the album because they said it didn't fit. I think that's badass because I hate it when record companies force a band to throw on a cover that's completely out of place. The production on this album is pretty dang good in my opinion, but from what King says, there was a lot of fighting between the band and the producer because they wanted to do some things differently. But King says nowadays he understands because he didn't want some amateur musicians and amateur producers messing with the good sound of the album, so in a way they kind of worked together well. And they were actually going to tour on this album with Ozzy, but Ozzy called in sick and they had to cancel, I guess. And during this time they actually became friends with Metallica, so maybe their heaviness kind of rubbed off on them and created some more thrash metal. The album begins with a classic song known as Evil, which is a huge fan favorite. It's a very speedy and heavy as hell song. Has some really great chugging riffs throughout it and a lot of great different time changes. It kind of goes into mid-tempo for the verse. It sounds a little weird, but King delivers some really good vocals on there. Then it goes back into the chorus, which has this incredible galloping riff to it. And King hits this great high note when he says, EVIL! And then it goes into this kind of really progressive and crazy middle section where you have this great melodic bit, then there's some really crazy heavy parts, and then we go into the absolute speed-fest solo section that is absolutely insane. It's weird, sometimes this song feels longer than it is, but in a good way, where they have so many great different changes, and it feels extremely satisfying. Even though it's an amazing song, I personally feel the first half of this album, which is the easier stuff to get into, and maybe the more memorable stuff, is the weaker half of the album. Then we're going to Curse the Pharaohs, which is kind of a punky song. It's very slow tempo. It has some really cool little fills from the guitar players in there. It has this real cool heavy chugging riff throughout. And you have King hitting these kind of weird notes that are a little funny to the first listen, but his high notes on there are really classic, and the chorus is catchy as hell. And the great riffs in that chorus are just absolutely classic, and they almost like parallel the vocals even though they're chords. It sounds really cool. And then the song gets really, really good in the middle section. You have some really classic, progressive, and chugging riffs that are extremely memorable, and even more memorable than the main parts of the song. Then there's some really great lead work where they're playing like almost solos together, and then they go into this absolute batshit solo section, and some really great melodic and heavy riffs in that section as well. It keeps changing over and over. And I absolutely love the song also because I think it probably has some of the best lyrics off the album, and the subject matter is pretty cool about like ancient Egypt and stuff. And it's not a generic song where, you know, a lot of metal bands, if they make a song about Egypt, it has the Phrygian scale, which is like Egyptian sounding. This one is just punkish. I think they did it very well. Then we have a classic song, Into the Cove, and it begins really weird. You have the little melodic bit in there that after a while is actually pretty damn cool because it's almost like a little classical thing that I believe Hank Sherman wrote. Then it goes into this really classic, catchy, sort of punky riff. Kind of reminds me of like Seek and Destroy or something. Throughout the entire song, King is hitting these incredible falsettos, I love the way he says, "Into my coffin!" And this song is extremely progressive. There's incredible melodic lead parts all over the place in this song. You have soloing back and forth from the members, and they're just doing these incredible melodies. I think it's probably one of the better songs off the whole album, and I think perfect name for this series, you know. Great song title, great riffs, great lead melodies. Just a great song. They're probably the weakest song off the album, and it has some really good melodies in there, especially the chorus where they do that chant with the really cool melodic guitar over it. But I'm not a huge fan of the verse. I think King kind of sings weird on there. Sure, he hits some good falsettos, but it kind of sounds all over the place, kind of like maybe one of his later down the road songs that just sounds a little cheesy and not well developed enough. But there are some cool heavy parts in here, but I do really love that chorus with the chanting. And there's some really good melodic bits later in the song, and of course the middle section is really good on this song, so that makes it still a good song even though it's the weakest off the album. There's also like this really cool very slow tempo riff that sounds very drudgy and almost doomy, and then they go into this incredible speedy gallop. We begin the second side with a classic single from this album, Black Funeral. Has really drudging, catchy, heavy riffs to it. The lead melodies over top of the riffs are incredibly evil. This song literally sounds like you're falling into hell. The lyrics to this song are really good. And of course there's that classic kind of cheesy part where King says, "All hail Satan," and then the falsetto version repeating what he just said. And then it's weird, it kind of goes into a little melodic part after the chorus every time, where King's kind of singing this melodic, beautiful part. The middle section is very quick, it's a very quick song, but it's very pleasing. It has some great solos, and overall fills up its time perfectly. It doesn't feel too short or too long. One of the best songs off the album easily. Speaking of best songs off the album, holy shit, Satan's Fall is kind of a hard song to remember because there's quite literally 16 riffs in 11 minutes. We're talking a change of the entire tempo and an entire different movement almost every 30 seconds that goes into like some really dark build-ups and then like really crazy riffs. All of a sudden some more doomy riffs, some speedy riffs that are really catchy. I do really like the beginning movement because that one's really catchy. It has this awesome fucking heavy gallop and the bass sounds really good in there. And of course it builds up into the heavier sections, like I said, some good melodic stuff, some catchy, crazy lead guitar notes. And it's mostly just kind of showing off what Hank Sherman wrote because it took him forever to write the song. He just kept piling on ideas after months, yet the song is only like 11 minutes. And then all of a sudden it kind of gets quiet. I think it's maybe a new song or something like Melissa, because Melissa's a melodic song as well. But all of a sudden it goes into a little melodic bit, and then all of a sudden it hits you like a fucking hammer where it goes into the speed metal part towards the very end, where you hear just the drums going apeshit with this incredible fast melody where it sounds like they're about to fall off a cliff. My favorite part in the entire album is that speed metal part towards the end. And King's singing on that part is really great, and the lyrics are incredible. And of course, they throw in some great riffs and soloing at the end part, and it almost feels like its own little song because I think it's the longest movement, and it is easily the best part of maybe their entire discography. A really great riff in there. Probably the best song off the album. Then we have Melissa, which is kind of a weird song. I don't listen to it as much as the other songs off this album, but it's definitely not only a classic, but it's incredibly well written. It's weird because it's a ballad, which you'd think would be like selling out or cheesy, but they kind of wrote it in a way where King delivers it in a very creepy way, and Melissa is actually this skull that he used to have, like this actual human skull that he named Melissa, and kind of wrote a song and story about how Melissa went to hell or something, was a prostitute, something like that. But after like the doomy horror movie sounding stuff, it actually goes into some really cool riffs, and there's some incredibly memorable, great vocal melodies that King throws in there as well. Another absolutely classic song that's very progressive and kind of drawn out, which maybe is its only downfall, as it feels a little too long, but I still think it's overall extremely well written. There's so many great parts in there. Then we have Black Masses, which is kind of a weird song because, you know, it's not on the album, believe it or not, except for the remasters nowadays release it on the album, which it should have been in the first place. I think they had to cut the song because they thought the album would be too long or something like that. But I don't get why they cut this song because Black Masses is probably my favorite song off the album. So I personally, because it's so good, I count it as a song off the album. But if you're going to get this album, I'd say get a remaster that has this song on there because it is that good. It kind of begins with this like really fast, speedy part with like some really great bass work. Then all of a sudden it stops and goes to this groove kind of like Devil Eyes from the EP, where you have this amazing drum and bass groove, and the guitar work is really catchy. I hum that guitar riff to myself all the time. It never gets out of my head, and I think that's a good thing because the song is so good. Almost the entire song, King is just hitting high notes. Black Masses! The high notes are delivered perfectly and drawn out perfectly within each little section of the verse. It's, I think, probably his best vocal performance ever. And I love the little chorus. It feels very chaotic and all over the place, but I think it sounds really cool. I don't know what I would have thought it's a filler song at all. The riffs in there are incredible. The guitar solos are great. It's easily, in my opinion, the most catchy, memorable song off the entire album. In conclusion, a lot of people argue what album's better, Melissa or Don't Break the Oath, because those two are easily their best. It's like some of the best metal out there, Melissa and Don't Break the Oath. And I think Don't Break the Oath is considered better usually, but I have to go with Melissa. After many listens, I began to like Melissa a lot more. There's just better songs in there in my opinion. Black Masses, Satan's Fall, Black Funeral, Evil, Into the Coven. Just some incredible stuff. Really check this one out. It's totally worth it. I think if you can get into Metallica, you could probably get into this because it's not like black metal or anything.